We are back. But not a big week. I forget where they're playing this week. Does anyone know where it's?
It's RBC week, Joel.
RBC, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a small week, but just kidding. It is a tradition unlike any other. It's Masters week. This is it. This is the week I couldn't be more excited. We're coming in hot. Now, listen, as you all know, a lot of you have listened to us before. We have a lot of regular fans. The audience is what makes this show run. The audience is the best audience out there, and the audience participates in our draft. And the audience won last week, heading into the Masters as champion. So I was told to say we're bringing Sia back because it's Masters week, but the reality is we can't have the audience winning again. So Sia's coming on to ensure that the picks are regulated and the audience doesn't get another victory. Kidding, of course. It's going to be a fun draft. Sia, welcome back. How you doing tonight?
No, I'm fully here to sabotage team audience. So I like the setup there. I was going to be a little bit more discreet about it, but hey, good for the audience for drafting a good team last week. I believe the week before was the infamous veto, which for the record, Kitayama actually survived the cut, lessened the blow a little bit. I think they were tied going into Sunday. But I do want to mention, I don't know, would that team have won if they put in Mackenzie Hughes? Because they had Jason Day on that team who missed the cut. Terrible pick. So I'm wondering, did it even matter at the end of the day? No,
it did. To make it even worse here, I'm not sure if you saw the show last week, but if the audience had taken Mackenzie Hughes, Spence wouldn't have got Mackenzie Hughes, and the audience would have won. And also, if they'd taken Taylor Moore, they would have won. So the key was that it wasn't just a veto; it was vetoes by Sia Nejad, which really cost the audience.
I think we should blame you three, frankly, because I asked you all about Mackenzie Hughes, and I didn't see a lot of ringing endorsements there. Audience, I think you should turn on the three of them on this screen. Just saying.
In Sia's defense, Mackenzie Hughes is not playing this week. Kurt Kitayama is. So it doesn't mean, I'm not sure what that means, if one's better or not, but one's in the field, one's not. So that's got to say something to the pick. Spence, love the hat. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I probably put together one of the worst 6-6 lineups last week to not get the job done, so that was unfortunate. I was thinking of this, Sia. You know who you are, who you've turned into on the show?
Oh, I can't wait to hear
it. So I used to watch a lot of wrestling back in the day, and I haven't necessarily watched it much recently, but I did get caught up into this hype of everything that was going on at WrestleMania. Somebody who was loved in the past, they're away for a while from, the shows that they're on. They come back. They just turn full heel here. This is what you have done, Sia. You are The Rock. That is exactly who you are.
I mean, I'll take that all day. And I'm happy to go full heel turn like Zach Jeffers suggests here. We'll see how this show plays out, frankly. I mean, maybe that's the direction I end up going. Maybe I fall back in line with the audience. Only one way to find out.
Well, we do have a fun show ahead. David, you have been on a hot streak. How you doing tonight?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm just absolutely amped for the Masters. I'm even more amped that team audience are going to be absolutely screwed over by Sia tonight. I'm really pleased that we've taken out that big threat from team audience and puts us all in the running to win this week. But I mean, look, if you don't get excited about Augusta National, about the beautiful patch of land there in Augusta, Georgia, all the azaleas, driving down Magnolia Lane. I've got all the ingredients ready for my pimento sandwiches, just ready to sit here in New Zealand, dreaming of everything that's going to happen this week at Augusta National. So absolutely psyched. It's going to be awesome.
I mean, if you're watching this show, you realize this already, but this is it. This is our Super Bowl. This is the biggest week of golf. This is the one we get up for. It's a little odd that it's kind of before all the other majors, so it's not like the end of the season, but this is the big week. So super excited. There's all the tournaments you could possibly want to enter on DraftKings that you might be interested in. They're available. Choose your way of playing. For tonight, we are going to have a draft. For anyone who is new, I suggest you log in on YouTube. If you log in on YouTube, you can get involved in the chat. The audience, you will be drafting your own team. So for the regulars, you guys know how this works. For anyone new tonight, get involved. It's very interactive. When we do the draft and the audience goes, everyone can nominate a golfer, And as you draft with Sia is going to basically finalize your pick based off the nominations from the audience. So everyone get involved, talk to each other. Sia might sabotage your pick, but usually you guys do pretty well with Sia. So I'm pretty optimistic on that front. Before we dive into the draft, Spence, who gives one of the most detailed course breakdowns you will find, is going to tell us what you're looking for. What are the key statistics we want and what kind of profile of golfer we're targeting at the course this week at Augusta National.
So I think the Masters, and this is something that you're going to hear on any show, it delivers a really unique outlook from a statistical perspective when you dive into the data. Obviously, part of that answer is going to stem from this being the only major championship that takes place at the same track yearly. It's always nice when you can get all the expected returns at a venue, whether that's from the historical trends or the statistical trends, like specifically when shot tracking came into the mix, 20 plus years ago here. So it renders this predictive nature, no matter how you want to look at it. You get these sub 90 man fields. There's usually, if we're talking purely upside here, about 30% of the participants that kind of get eliminated one way or another, whether that's because they're a first-time participant, somebody who's over the age. Obviously, you have a lot of past champions that come back here. I do think for those reasons, and we do have a better first-time narrative than probably ever, we could have discussions of why Wyndham Clark or Ludwig Oberg fit or don't fit this course, but about probably one of the strongest mixes that we've gotten from some of these new names. But you get a venue here that it's going to, in my opinion, like it always does because it's a wide open venue, but maybe a little bit more so this year, accentuate distance. There's some rain that's projected into the forecast. I think that, we'll see if this makes it softer at the end of the day, but only had a first-time winner once since 1979. I think that explanation is kind of where this predictability has come into play over the course of time. You have all these nuances of Augusta National that really take time to learn. You're going to see that with multiple tiered perspectives on the putting surfaces. That produces nearly 60% more three putts than average. You get all these runoff locations with the surface. It is this diabolical test at the end of the day. Everybody always wants to, and I know that's kind of contradictory from what I just said. Everybody wants to over add distance to the mix. I think it's going to matter for all the reasons that I talked about, but it's important to look at it. And this is not a negative against a player like this week, but let's look directly at what Bryson DeChambeau has produced at Augusta National. That is almost too much aggression. That's taking this and viewing the course in a situation where you have these wide open fairways and say, I'm just going to go for broke in these spots. You still can't do that. You have to play proper golf. There's a lot of mistakes that loom because of the runoff areas, just the mixture of the speed that you get on this bent grass surface here. So from a game theory perspective, if we're speaking directly on DraftKings, I think there's a really fun discussion to be had with the way that pricing has taken place this week. We didn't go down to the $5,000 golfers like past tournaments. We're now $6,000 and up. So real decisions are going to have to be made for lineups, and that's what makes it fun for this event.
For sure. And I think that was a miss because you could have easily taken some past champions that are way too old to compete and put them down in the 5K range, and no one really would have played them anyway. But I think there's some guys in this tournament that are literally going to be 0% owned because they're just old and they're not really competitive. The one other thing I wanted to touch on is it's known. If you're watching the show, you probably know this already. This isn't new information. This is one of the most predictive course of course history. So guys who have played here tend to do well. And I think, as you mentioned, Spence, nobody, I think only once a first timer has won this tournament since, what was it, 1970 79. But what that means is, yes, you probably need to have some experience to win the tournament. That doesn't mean if it's your first time playing here, you can't be successful. That doesn't mean if you haven't played here before, you can't be put in your roster. Like we all been talking about Ludwig Ober. He would probably someone I'll be rostering this week. He's never played here before, but he's one of the best golfers in the world right now. He's unbelievable. I don't want people to think, well, you can't play him because he hasn't played here before. It's unlikely. I would even say that he'll win, but having a good result is certainly still on the table. All right, let's pull the draft board up. So for order, the audience, you won, so you got to pick, and I believe we went with what was posted in the chat. So audience, since you won, the first person to post, I think it was Zach. I think we're just going to go with that order. Putting me last, smart move, Zach. I wouldn't want me picking first either. So we'll go Spencer first, audience, Sia audience second, Dave third, and I will be going first. If you're new to this, A quick refresher of how this works. It's just like your typical fantasy football draft, snake style. So, Spencer, you get the first pick. Lucky you. Audience, David, I only can get 2 in a row, and then it goes back. The caveat here is you can't just take all the best golfers. Your lineup needs.
Did we just lose him?
Yeah.
He's withdrawn. He's withdrawn already. I just want to, while we've got this moment, I just want to throw shade immediately to every single one of the audience's picks here. I can't believe that they've bought into Spence sucking up over the last 2 tournaments, really just playing into them. He knew the Masters was coming up. Like, this was his game plan all along. Just suck up to the audience, rubbish what Sia was doing, really like play into the audience's hands. And look what they've done. They've gone and handed him the first pick at the first major of the year, the biggest golf tournament of the year. So sorry, audience. No sympathy for the fact that every single one of your picks is going to be jinxed now.
Speaking of no sympathy, Model Maniac, otherwise known as Back 9 Bets, otherwise known as Byron, is in the chat. And he said, how did I do last week? And Zach Jeffers, who I love so much, says, you suck, Byron. Absolutely love that. But
So
Joel,
brutal.
just to finish Joel's sentence, for those of you that are new, obviously you got to stay under the $50,000 salary cap that DraftKings allots. So, Spencer, it is your pick.
I just want to touch on what David has said. So these are character traits that we're not talking about. I want to show how much this is not true. I will forfeit my first pick. The audience can pick first. I will take the first pick in the draft in the order, but the audience can make the first selection. I will go second, and then we'll move it back to the way that the order shows with it. So audience can pick in front of me both in the first round and the second round here.
This is a disgusting poker move, and it's probably going to work. Can't wait to see what the audience does. I'm certainly not going to have any say in this particular pick, Kurt Kitayama. Fred Couples has been nominated.
It's straight away. Fred Couples. I love it.
Okay, we need
this is
nomination.
This
we have
is
the
where
first
all the
pick.
kindness.
Jason says Scotty Scheffler. He's a pretty good pick. Brooks Koepka from Byron. Scotty is ratified here thanks to Albert Panzeca. So it's going to be Scotty Scheffler, number 1 overall. So Spencer, I got to kick this to you because you know full well you could have taken Scotty first. You decided not to. First of all, was that a strategic move by you? And second of all, if you had the first pick, would it have been Scotty Scheffler?
It's a tough thing. And I think this is from a game theory perspective where we can have a massive discussion of what's the proper way to go about it this week. Scotty's going to be number 1 in any model that you build. If you're going any other way with it, it's not correct. He is on a historic run right now. There is nothing to say about a Scotty Scheffler pick that is a negative. Like, you know what you're signing up for with him. He is a top 5 machine. I just think that there's multiple options at top to consider. Like, Scotty's the number 1 option to go, but it's kind of just like I said, if David's going to say one thing with it, I'm going to forfeit the pick and I'll let the audience have number 1 here. And I feel fine about it because, like, for me, if I don't win and the audience wins, I'm still considering that a victory. Like, Sia, unfortunately, I know it says not Sia's audience on there, but I do feel like this is my audience at this point.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. So it's also your pick. So who is actually going first for Team Spencer?
I am between 2 players right now. I am going to go somebody who's going to be popular. Probably one of the most popular plays outside of Scotty Scheffler here. So I run my model to project 3 separate outcomes. I look for pure upside. That is going to remove any of your non-statistical downside traits that come into play. I want safety. That essentially highlights your made cut equity. And then an overall grade comes into the mix. Just that's like your primary blueprint for the projection that I'm trying to find this week. There were so many areas of my model where, yes, Scotty Scheffler was number 1, but for me, Xander Schauffele continued to pop in almost all of the iterations of what I'm talking about there. So he placed first in my model in all of these categories that I'm about to mention right now. Proximity over 200 yards in 2024. Weighted proximity from 150 to 175 yards over a 2-year running perspective. Expected par 3 and par 4 scoring. Weighted scrambling. Projected strokes gain total. This is beyond an outright answer because now we're talking DFS and he's not at the very top of the board. I understand the bet that I'm making here. This is one of those situations where it's very easy to go with public consensus. And Xander's going to be popular for DFS, so it's a different discussion that we're having here. But there's always that built-in narrative that comes into play that Xander cannot close. I hear that, and I understand where everybody's coming from. He's a 30-year-old who has really turned it around, 42 consecutive made cuts, 3 top 5 finishes over his last 4 events. I think this tells a completely different story of a golfer that is primed to win a tournament. Is it a major championship? I don't know, but I really like Xander this week. I think this public narrative, and we even look at it in the outright market. He opened at 22-1. He's been pushed down into this 14 to 16-1 range. I was lucky enough to grab it before the board reopened on Monday at 22, but Xander's one of my favorite plays in this tournament. I'm just going to be willing to live with whatever the outcome ends up being and just stomach it knowing that my numbers like him this week.
David, you're feeling on Xander because I'm probably not going to get to Xander personally. I understand all the arguments. I do think he lacks that killer instinct. I do think that's kind of a thing where we kind of see it. We saw it last week with Denny McCarthy and to some extent from Akshay Bhatia, obviously the eventual winner. But, I do think Xander on the back 9, he can just kind of flail just enough to just like not really be super relevant on 18. With that said, everything Spencer said sounds pretty right to me. Are you playing? It's a discounted number. He'll get some ownership, but it probably won't be too far beyond like 20%, I'm guessing. Where are you at on Xander, David?
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of ownership, you've got Joaquin Niemann right there as well, and he's going to be very popular. I probably share the same sentiment that you do, Sia. I think that Xander's just disappointed at these big events time and time again, and my patience is probably a little bit out on him. In saying that, his last 7 majors, he's finished 13th, 14th, 15th, 10th, 18th, 10th, 17th. So if you're looking for like a consistent performer, then there's probably no better option than Xander. I do think that the course really suits him. I just really struggle to see him actually going out and winning this thing and actually getting across the line. Another prime example just happened at the Players' Championship. Like he had multiple parts over those last 6 holes where he could have taken that tournament away from Scotty Scheffler. Again, he didn't. He didn't close it out. He rebounded next week. The week after, I thought he might struggle off the back of such a disappointing result. And he came out and finished 5th at the Valspar, which just like for me almost goes to show that I think Xander's like just quite comfortable continually just putting himself in contention and never actually winning. And the second thing I'd say is at first I thought Spencer was being an absolute suck out to the audience. Now I'm just convinced that Spencer's just stupid because he should have taken Scotty Scheffler at the first pick.
I was going to ask you about
appreciate that,
Scotty.
David. Nice words there.
Joel, Xander Schauffele, yes or no?
I am similar to Spencer in that I like Xander this week. And I do keep saying to myself, how many times can we say he's due, right? Because it feels like he keeps competing and not getting there. And this feels like a week where things are lining up for him to finally compete and do it. But I think to the point David's making too, I also see like he does seem safe in that like, a top 10 to 15, I'm pretty sure about, but is he able to close and get you a win or a top 3, which is really what you need from him here. So again, he's in really good form. It's been consistent for a long time. It does feel like a good spot. So he will be in my player pool.
Can I give a real answer back to what David said?
Yes.
Because I mean, we can say stupid on this, but we're talking about a 30% owned golfer that is a $6,000 board here. From a game theory perspective, I'm not saying don't play Scotty Scheffler. That's not where this argument's going. I think Scotty Scheffler makes reasons for everything that everybody wants to talk about on the show. My concerns come down to how are we going to separate our builds here? Are there players down beneath that you like? I think there's a handful that we could talk into, but be very cognizant with your Scotty Scheffler builds because when you go Scotty Scheffler up top, you're in a very specific build that's going to start lining up with every other Scotty Scheffler build. You cannot start Scotty Scheffler, Brooks Koepka. You don't have enough money to go that route. Right. So you get pushed down into a territory with everybody else to where I'm kind of a believer. I made this argument with Byron the other night, and I'm going to stick to this. Even if Scotty Scheffler wins this golf tournament, which I think is a possibility, I'm not guaranteeing that the winning lineup ends up having Scotty Scheffler in it in some of these contests.
To that, I want to make a point to that because that's an interesting point that I've been thinking about a lot. I've been making some preliminary lineups and seeing what it looks like, and there's one that I'm contemplating 2 different results in the build. And the contemplation is Scotty Scheffler and Kurt Kitayama, or replace both of them with Ludwig Aubert and Xander Schauffele. So which kind of tag team would you prefer? Like, yeah, you can get Scotty, but you really got to go down to Kirk Cameron to make that work. Or you can get basically 2 all-stars. Obviously, neither one's Scotty, but you get 2 all-stars. So how would you prefer to build a lineup? And that's kind of how you got to think about playing Scotty.
I was certain you were setting up a joke when you opened with Kurt Kitayama there. Don't get me wrong. I love it. That's probably the combo I'm going with here. But David, okay, we're only on the 3rd pick, so we'll pick up the pace a little bit. But David, your first Masters pick for 2024.
Yeah, we all know Sia Nejad loves Kurt Kitayama, and I'll apologize for calling Spencer stupid. I said it in the heat of the moment, and mainly for the purposes of content. Than actually, I mean, Spencer's one of the sharpest and smartest guys on this podcast, far smarter than me. But yeah, I guess for me with the Scotty Scheffler thing, right? Like we've got a favorite here who's paying 4 to 1 to win a golf tournament that has only ever seen a shorter price golfer when Tiger Woods was coming here in 2013. And the fact that he's 12,100 in DFS markets, like he really should have been 13,000 given what the bookmakers are kind of saying about his chances here. So we'll wrap up that comment. Spencer is not stupid officially. That's my real answer. And I will come in with my first pick, which is going to be Will Zalatoris. His record at the Masters is absolutely impeccable. Second on debut around this golf course is incredibly impressive. You do benefit from some tries around here typically. He came out right out of the gate, second on his very first chance, nearly won the thing, and then followed that up with the 6th place finish in his second attempt. The correlated form at Riviera is very, very good. Second earlier this year behind Hideki Matsuyama, who's a Masters champion. A number of other Masters champions have won there. Bud Watson's won the Riviera 3 times, and he's a 2 times Masters champion, for example. A multitude of other names have played very, very well at Riviera as well. So like that he's healthy, like that he's played a practice round with Tiger Woods as well. Hopefully picked his brains, gained a few more insights. And look, I think he's in fantastic form. I also like that he's priced up a little bit here. I'm hoping that diverts some people away from him. Some people find some other names in the 9K range that they'd rather go to, because I'm very happy to take Zalatoris with impeccable course history.
Okay, so I have a really good question for Zalatoris. I say it's a really good question because I think a lot of people have this question on their mind with Zalatoris. So good course fit, good course history. But if you look at and this is recency bias, right? If you look at his last 2 tournaments, like it hasn't looked good at all for him in terms of the final result, you know, in the 70s and then missing the cut. I guess my question for you is, I mean, you say he's priced up, but if those 2 tournaments didn't happen, 9,200 would be a huge bargain. Honestly, if those 2 tournaments didn't happen, maybe he's like 96, 9,700 instead of 9,200. And so I'm curious about the recent form argument. Are you just willing to overlook that because it's just 2 tournaments, not really a big deal? Maybe just he wasn't vibing that part of, I guess it was part of the Florida swing and Houston. Now that I think about it, yeah, it was the Players and Houston where he was cut T74. So are you just not worried about that, or you didn't see anything in his game in those 2 tournaments that worries you about Augusta?
Not at all. I mean, look, the answer I'd give, and probably the most recent example was Phil Mickelson last year, right? Like the Augusta National is such a peculiar, intricate golf course where you have to approach these targets in quite a specific way because you've got all the undulations and slopes on the greens. Going for the pin is not necessarily the best method at the Masters. Often it's not. Actually, it's playing away from the pin and using the slopes to your advantage. And Zalatoris has proven that he can do that. And that's why, you know, last year we saw Phil Mickelson arrived at this golf tournament. He'd played 3 times on a tour that only has 48 players, finished no better than 27th, and came out here as a 53-year-old and finished second. And that's where that course history and experience at Augusta National comes through. And the other thing I'd say is with both of those, his ball striking looked really good. His putter looked really bad. I don't think TPC Sawgrass is the best fit for Zalatoris anyway. But the fact that he's putted here well previously is a real positive for me. And the fact that his ball striking there was also a real positive. So again, if that gets people off Zalatoris this week, even better. And I'm happy to play the ownership leverage.
I think it does. And that's why I think Zalatoris is a particularly good play. I think there's a few guys that I think are kind of superstarish, but in people's minds just aren't in good form and they're just not going to get played. So something to consider. Joel, you've got back-to-back picks. I don't know if you want to comment on Zalatoris, whether you're in or out or you just hadn't thought much about him specifically, because I do think a lot of eyes just sort of glossed over Zalatoris because of the last 2 tournaments. I really like David's argument. Any comments there? And then, of course, you got back-to-back picks.
You know, it's funny. I like Zalatoris. I'm a little concerned because of the last two tournaments, but I think it's funny that I'm concerned because I'm the one that always takes the risk and the guy withdraws and it bites me. So I'm typically the guy who would dive in and play someone in this type of scenario and take on that risk. I think David made a lot of good points. And I think the one that I would hone in on is if there is a tournament that someone is, I don't want to say saving up for, but they're basically trying to tune up for it and be perfect it, it's this one. So if you want to say, hey, he was focused on the Masters and that's kind of the reason for the result of the last two tournaments and he's putting it all together for this week, if that's the case, then it would feel like 9,200 and he's 100% is probably underpriced.
Yeah, and before you give your two picks, I just want a yes or no from Spencer. Yes or no, what does the model say? What do you say on Will Zalatoris?
The model says no. The ownership that everybody's talking about, I'm really surprised to see him sub 15% in my model. I thought this week was going to enter and we'd be talking about 20% plus owned Zalatoris. That ownership seems to have moved in the direction of Hideki. It's moved up a little bit to Neiman, and it's very surprising for me for a golfer who has shown mastery at this course in the past. So my model is against him for one reason or another, but I think from an ownership standpoint, that was the shocker to me. Just that we're talking about a name right now that is he's outside of the top 15 players in projected ownership. I did not see this coming for a course that we want to talk about rollover predictability. Like, how much better can you get than what Zalatoris has put?
Yeah, except for the recency bias, right? Because of the last two tournaments. And that's where you potentially, not just with Zalatoris, but with others, maybe you gain an edge on people. We kind of know where the recent form has been pristine with a lot of golfers. Some of those golfers we want to select as well. But for the ones that they've gone a couple of tournaments or even a few tournaments where it's looked checkered, I think that's when you might want to put that in the rearview mirror a little bit and just recognize that not only are they potential superstars on the tour, but they've been superstar-ish at Augusta. So it's something to consider when you're making your lineups. All right, Joel, back-to-back picks.
All right, with my first pick, I'm going back to one of my old guys, a guy that I used to draft every week. Haven't drafted as much this year, but that was a mistake because he's back, and he's back in a big way, and that is Hideki Matsuyama. Hideki is playing unbelievable golf, and if you want to talk about Masters history and the ability to play one of those courses, not only is he a past champion, he seems to have a good result every year when he plays here. The last 2 years, he top 20. But if you look at it, he wasn't playing as well as he's playing now going into this tournament. He overproduced at the Masters the last 2 years. He's going into this tournament as hot as he's been in a long time, even hotter than he was when he won it. So going into it, I think he's going to come with a lot of ownership. A lot of people see what I'm seeing. That's the crux. But at 9K, I think it's great value. I love Decky this week. Other than Scheffler, I would have probably considered Decky with the first overall pick here in this spot.
Yeah, go ahead. I just real quick. I love Hideki's consistency at this course. I mean, it speaks volumes. Over the last 9 times he's played here, so this dates back to 2015. He's been inside the top 28 of those 9 times. Of course, we know he won in 2021. By the way, the one time he didn't come within the top 20 was T32. Like, the guy is just so comfortable here. It's unbelievable. Anyway, Joel, go ahead with your second pick.
Precisely. And I think, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, the theme continues. We want guys that have shown it. I think that's the way to predict, especially in these different price zones, like how I want to target guys. Guys that have done well here in the past here. And I'm going to go with my favorite value play on the board, and that's Russell Henley. At 7,200, he's clearly underpriced in my book. Another guy who has a great Masters history. I mean, T4 last year, T30 the year before, T15, T11, 21. I mean, each of his last 5 tries have been a good result. At 7,200, he doesn't need to win the tournament, right? A good result is all you need to get. And he's coming off of a week where he just has played. He played great golf. He was 4th place at the Valero. He gained 8 strokes on approach. If he can return some semblance of that form from last week to this week, I think you get another very good result from Russell Henley.
I don't know. See, Prasant Nadella said Russ is very mispriced. I don't know when Prasant said that, but the chat thinks, Joel, you might have stolen that pick. Can I say this about Russ? David, before we get to your pick, I'm out on Russell Henley. I like what Joel just said about how consistent he's been the last 4 or 5 years. It is really impressive. I mean, I looked at last year. He kind of did it all with short game. Ball striking wasn't there, but he's a good ball striker. And, he's done so well over the course of a long period of time. For some reason, I just don't see it holding up. I think I'd rather go to the 6K range and take some upside guys there. So I'm just putting it out there. I'm out on Russell Henley. David, before we get to your pick, I'm going to go to Spencer first and then you on just in or out on Russell Henley. Spencer, you're first.
I mean, I obviously don't love the ownership. And Joel knows this. If a lineup starts Hideki and Henley, there's going to have to be a way to get different with it. But I like both of the two picks that he's made. I still think that this is a very reasonable start that you can have to a lineup. You're just going to have to find a way to get different. And I'm sure Joel has that in the back of his mind of how he's going to do it. Russell Henley's Masters success, we can point to the 4th place finish that he put together last year. Look, I mean, from 2014 on, I know he missed it in 2016 where he didn't play the tournament. Nothing worse than a 31st place finish. This is a better golfer than any of those other years entering here. So I think we get the best form of what Hideki and Russell Henley have been at price tags to where there's reason why there's ownership there. I wish they would have been more expensive. It's the argument we always make. They were made too cheap. Everybody wants to play them, but I don't think all chalk is bad chalk. Like both of those two players are still in my player pool right now. So I like the start from Joel. I just want to be on record saying that.
Yeah, it's a good argument. David, you've got a pick, but your thoughts on Russell Henley? Maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe Joel and Spencer are right. Maybe we should be on Russell Henley, even though he is obviously percentage-wise quite owned in that low 7K range.
Yeah, no, look, that's the exact reason that I'm off the Russ bus this week. I have him floating around 17%, and I think he's a fine option in cash games. I agree with Joel and Spence that he is objectively too cheap, and you could look to go different elsewhere. I think in a large GPP is a spot to avoid because, the issue this week is there's a lot of weather in the forecast, right? There's a lot of wind and there's a lot of rain as well. So in some of those holes, like if you've got a westerly wind coming into, say, 13th, 15th, someone like Russell Henley going into the wind is just going to really struggle to get there into with the course is going to play a bit longer when it's wet as well. And so that lack of driving distance, I think, potentially then becomes to hinder him. And then weighing that up, I guess, with the fact that he's like 17% owned, I'm like, okay, well, are there other names down in that kind of range that I'd rather go to? Or as you said, dropping down into the 6K, for example. I suspect he'll probably make the cut. It's just whether that sort of like top 20 result that you'd really kind of want is there for him. But yeah, as Ben said, Joel can absolutely still build upon the way that he started and find some other places to get different, which I'm sure he will. Although Matsuyama is obviously going to withdraw. So I will take with my second pick another golfer who has had just actually one start at Augusta National. He finished 9th, and that was Sahith Theegala. So again, just a golfer who on their very first try around this golf course absolutely found a liking for the place. What I've been most impressed with Theegala lately is that he's moved from this golfer who had extreme upside. We knew that he could come out and win any tournament. And he's now added that crucial element of some consistency to his game. Like we've just seen consistently again and again him turning up at these spots. For example, 9th recently at the Players Championship. I don't think TPC Sawgrass is a good fit for Sahith Theegala. He's not that accurate off the tee. TPC Sawgrass is one of the most correlated between driving accuracy and success. And he finished 9th for one of the best field. And I think that just speaks volumes about his ability to manage these courses even better now than when he finished 9th here last year. He's had a second at the Plantation course earlier this season at the Century. That's one of the most correlated courses to Augusta National. The two that I've mentioned so far, Riviera and Plantation, John Rahm won both of those tournaments en route to putting on the green jacket last year. So he finished second at Century, and then he finished 6th at the Riviera last year as well. So correlated form all over the place. Looks to be in great form, and he's just way too cheap at 7,700.
Yeah, I mean, I think Theegala's a good pick. He's going to be pretty popular in that range, something to keep in mind. Joel, before we get to the audience pick, which I think is locked, somebody confirmed that it's locked for me, but Joel, what are you in or out on Theegala?
I'm in. I was considering him with one of my first picks there too. I like Theegala this week. It does seem he is underpriced at 7,700. To me, he had put himself into that upper echelon of like the B plus A minus tier. To have him kind of priced as a C plus is just way too low.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, let's go to audience has locked in a guy I really like. And I think, if you were going to go long shot in this tournament, I think the deepest I would go was like the 60-1 range, right where Shane Lowry is. So I love the Shane Lowry pick. I mean, to talk about recent form, coming in with really good recent form at the API, at the Players, at the Cognizant Classic. He really, really got hot. And then, of course, at the Masters over his last four, T16, 3rd, T21, and 25th. So he's really checking a lot of the boxes. The approach play has been really good lately. I noticed that Augusta, his off the tee game has been really good over the last couple of years. I think he has all the ingredients. I think I don't want to say he's underpriced, but I think there's just a lot of value both in the betting market and in the DFS market for Shane Lowry. Spencer, before we get to your picks, yes or no on Sugar Shane?
I'll make this very quick, Sia. So I write an article every single year that's the 7 deadly sins of Augusta, and it's things you cannot do if you actually want to win at Augusta National. Shane Lowry missed that list by the slimmest of margins. It narrowed it down to 9. You can click on it to find all 9 names. It's most of the options you would expect. It's a name I'm going to give you in a second there, but there's a lot to like about what Lowry has produced both at this tournament and his skill set and the way that it lines up here. So not necessarily somebody that my model was super bullish on, but I agree with him being a value here from what we've seen historically and what some of my numbers did end up saying at the end of the day. I think Lowry's intriguing.
And Spencer, before you give your back-to-back picks, David, I thought you were kind of shaking your head there. Like, is Lowry somebody that's on your DFS radar?
Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping that I'd be able to get him on the way back. And I think it was a case where the audience probably would have got Thigala or Lowry there. I went Thigala instead just based on saving a little bit of salary. But I think Lowry's a fantastic pick. Funnily enough, Sia, you may recall this. Before I got recruited into the Win Daily family, I sent you an article about the Masters a couple of years ago and mentioned Shane Lowry being my absolute favourite play at 50-1 that week. And he finished third. And that was part of the reason why I arrived through to Win Daily. So love the pick. I think Shane Lowry is going to be great. It's a real shame that the audience has stolen him because that means he's going to be jinxed now. But look, he's a fantastic golfer. And I think particularly with the weather forecast that we're seeing, like Shane Lowry just comes into play even more as an Open champion previously.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Spencer, you got back-to-back picks. Go ahead.
No, I was very happily letting the audience, for everybody wondering out there, pick in front of me in the first round, pick in front of me in the second round. That was part of the deal there. So it was on you guys. Anybody that was wondering out there, no problems with that. But I'm going to go with Harris English at $7,000. I know the course history. It's okay. 3 made cuts in 4 attempts. Nothing better than a 21st place finish. But I think there's a couple interesting notes about this. So Byron brought this up yesterday on the Rotoballer show. You date back to 2014. He's only played it 4 times. He's never gotten the ability to play it in back-to-back years. This will be the first time that he gets to tee it up in back-to-back seasons. So he may be able to build off of what we saw last year, but I'm always a believer, and it's kind of the argument that I make, whether it's from betting or for DFS purposes. I'm looking for the overcorrection in the market. I'm looking for a number that's moved too far in the opposite direction. He goes out in the Valero. He misses the cut. Very popular pick that week. Loses 4.3 strokes ball striking. This has turned into nothing more than an overcorrection, in my opinion. He had produced 4 top 21 finishes. If we remove that blip on the radar, he was averaging 3.35 shots tee to green during those starts that I just mentioned. We also get this short game elite mastery from him inside of the top 10 of my model in both expected strokes gained around the green and expected putting for this course. So there's a lot of different ways to consider Harris English. One of the ways that I've talked about outside of DFS, top 20 bet. You can get him outside of plus 300. I got him at plus 345. You can still get that number in the plus 300 range. So I think English is one of the best values here. And for me specifically, when we're having a conversation about starting with Scotty Scheffler on top, and then how do we make it work? To me, English is one of those salary savers that I was discussing how we can really make that lineup work its magic there. So I like English. I'm just going to pair him with Xander in this sense. And then for my second pick, I mean, if I go this route, I assume I'm going to end up losing one of the players that I want, and that's okay. I'll figure out a way to build it differently. But I will take Matthew Fitzpatrick at $7,900. Here's the thing about Fitzpatrick. Yes, back-to-back top 15 finishes at this course, the 14th and the 10th the past 2 seasons. Yes, when you want to talk about speed training and adding distance to the mix, we have seen that from him. The biggest thing that's held Fitzpatrick back up until recently, he added this 4-gram weight to his driver. I've talked about it on shows, probably talked about it last week on this show, but you got this really hodgepodge return from him with the driver. Since he's removed the weight, he said he removed it after the waste or during the waste management week. He's gained 0.91 strokes off the tee over those 6 starts. You want to compare that to the 8 tournaments before? He's lost 0.875. So we're talking about one of the best short game players in the world. We're talking about an immaculate scrambler who's going to be able to find success on hard scoring courses historically. I think this is a nice spot for Fitzpatrick to not only find success to potentially work into that top 20 that I talked about, but I think there's real win equity in this answer that's being said. I think he's moved from the 50s into the 40s for good reason here. My model thought he was one of the better values to consider in this $7,000 range. So I will go with him as my second pick.
Yeah, Joel, I like both of these picks. I have a 250 to 1 ticket on Harris English. That's long gone. It's in the 100 to 130 range, depending on where you find it. By the way, I put that out on the Win Daily Show on SiriusXM a few months ago, 6 weeks ago, and then I tweeted it out. So if you follow me on Twitter, you might have been on that. David, by the way, was on SiriusXM with us breaking down the Masters last Friday with actually it was me and Joel actually, as opposed to me and Jason on those Friday night shows on Fantasy Sports Radio. I like the English play. I think I'm not a Fitzpatrick guy, but like this now I kind of am, not because of what Spencer said. Like I was going to be kind of in on Fitzpatrick. That just kind of reinforces it. So real quick, what are you thinking? Because I think we've got our pick locked. Good job, audience. What are you thinking about Matt Fitzpatrick, Harris English? Are either of them in your pool?
They both are. I like both picks. I like Fitzpatrick, but I really like the English pick. English is going to be one of my favorite values. I think we're all aligned on this. If you take a deeper look into what happened last week, he kind of imploded on a couple holes, which makes the numbers look a lot worse. But other than those couple holes, he was still pretty good. He struck the ball pretty well. I think his form has been very consistent this year. I think that's going to translate over this week at 7K. He's a really strong value play.
Yeah, I think that's I like how Spencer has started his lineup for sure. All right, the audience, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, locked in Taylor Moore. And if I'm right about that, I like it. I mean, I think Taylor Moore has really spiked lately. I think he's in good shape. And Masters history, he's played once, I think top 40 finish. So that was pretty solid too. I think Taylor Moore checks a lot of boxes. And the salary relief, I think, is probably the biggest box he checks. Was that the pick? Was it not Taylor Moore? It was, right?
It was. I'm just shocked that you like Taylor Moore for a change. I mean, that's
it's funny you say that. Okay, so I actually forgot that the audience picked Taylor Moore when I was on a couple of weeks ago. You know who brought it to my attention? You all know Patrick McDonald from CBS, of course, in the First Cut Pod. He's been on he's not on Taylor Moore for the Masters for whatever reason. I did a show with him yesterday, but he's been on the Taylor Moore train. And then, of course, the audience was on Taylor Moore. I hope I'm not jinxing him by actually recommending him now, and maybe that's why I got like the no from the audience, and I thought that meant like, oh, no, we didn't actually pick Taylor Moore. We picked somebody else. But turns out they just don't want me endorsing their guy, Taylor Moore. I get that, by the way. But I like Taylor Moore here. David, before we get to your pick, I don't know if you have anything on Fitz or English, but Taylor Moore, in or no?
Well, I mean, this is karma for me calling Spencer stupid at the top of the show because he stole Harris English from me, who he was one of my favorite players on the board, would have loved to have taken him. Matt Fitzpatrick was going to be my pivot from losing Shane Lowry, so then he stole him from me as well. So this is just payback, obviously, retribution for me calling him dumb at the beginning of the show. In terms of Taylor Moore, look, I really prefer to go other routes down in that range. I don't think that he necessarily chose the correlated form at other course comps for me. And he looks really high owned. Like when you look through the DFS board, Taylor Moore's the name that kind of jumps out and you're like, oh yeah, Taylor Moore's been all right lately. And then you end up just putting Taylor Moore into your lineup. And so there's kind of 8 to 9% ownership I'm seeing at the moment for Taylor Moore in a range that is by far the highest. So I'd rather take a risk on somebody else in that range personally than eating the chalk in that low 6Ks.
Prasad, the team cheerleader apparently says we are finishing 4th out of 4. So that's good. You sounded like me, Prasad. I kind of like it. David, it's your pick. What you got?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, this draft's been completely ruined by what Spencer's done to me here. So I'm going to have to go and take a golfer that I will continue to tip at the Masters because I just feel that he has shown enough at this golf course to suggest it's a really good fit for him, and that's Tony Finau at 8,600. Augusta record is basically impeccable. He's played very, very well here a number of times. That's included finishing 10th on 2 occasions, including on debut, and a 5th back in 2019 behind Tiger Woods. who I think is pretty good at golf from what I've heard. Second last time out at the Houston Open. His game really suits Augusta National. At his best, he's one of the best ball strikers in the world. Very, very strong off the tee. Like his correlated form that he has at second at the Riviera at Genesis Invitational. He's had a 7th at Century as well. He's 19th earlier this year at Riviera as well. So lots of correlated form at the course comps that we're looking at, coming in good form, and seems to be going under the radar a little bit. I'm only getting sort of like 10% around him compared to some of the other names. So, Justin Thomas, Cam Young, for some reason, is getting a ton of attention. Cam Smith's right there as well. So I think he flies under the radar a little bit, and very difficult name to get to if you're building with Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah, I'm not in on Tony Finau, but I kind of like how your lineup is looking. It does look like you've got some guys that can spike, particularly at Augusta. Let me ask you, Joel, in or out on Tony Finau?
I'm in, and I normally am out on Finau, but to me, it's the combination of his history here at this course, but it's also married with his form is good. He's playing good golf, and I think Tony Finau is one of those the type of golfer that's very streaky. You play him when his form is on the rise, and if you can get him at a course where he has a good history and his form is on the rise, that's a perfect marriage. So I'll be playing Tony Finau this week.
Yeah, I mean, the metrics outside of the Valspar, the metrics look really, obviously the short game has been a problem. Let's not just like sidestep that. Those are shots too. The putter and around the green play hasn't been great, specifically the putter, obviously. But yeah, I'm probably out on Tony Finau. I totally get the argument there. Joel, you've got back-to-back. Oh, Spencer, did you have something on Tony?
I just wanted to say, if it makes you feel any better, David, that's where I was going to go with it with Tony Finau. I think the two most mispriced players on the board, if we want to just look $8,000 and up, forget ownership for a second. I think it's Hideki and I think it's Finau. I think those are the two guys that are just not priced correctly at the end of the day. Finau is a very intriguing GPP target that has the right price tag with the ball striking that I'm looking for. I am very disappointed not to be able to fit Finau into this lineup that I currently have.
Yeah, fair enough. Lion-Eye Fan 13 likes Tony Finau too. I could go either way on Tony Finau. I just know I'm not going to have him in my pool. Not because I hate him necessarily, but there's just other guys I like. There's only so many I can fit into my pool. All right, Joel, you've got 2 in your pool so far. Who are the next 2?
All right. I am now going to have a theme with my next 2 picks. I'm going to buy into what Spencer taught us in the course breakdown earlier. Power distance is your friend. And I'm going to take 2 of the most powerful distance hitters that are on tour and in the field. I'm going to start with Ludwig Aubert. And the thing about Ludwig is he's unbelievable. He's one of the best golfers in the world. He has never played here before. And a lot of people are going to be a little scared off because he doesn't have that history or the past results. His ownership, I think, is going to dip a little bit because of that. And that definitely is a factor. And I'm probably not betting him to win the tournament outright. But for how good he is at 9,100, I would not be surprised at all if you get a 6th or 8th out of Ludwig. And that's totally all you need in this type of a build. So for his talent, I love Ludwig this week. And I'm also going to take Cameron Young, who at 8,500, we've seen has plenty of upside. He tends to rise up in these majors and play really well in these big spots. He's another guy that can hit the ball a mile, get himself ahead in some of these situations. His ball striking has been excellent, and he has a good result here in the past. So this is enabling me. It's interesting this week because of the field and Scotty. You can be pretty balanced in your build without playing Scotty and get a lot of these guys in that 8 to 9, low 9K tier, and that's kind of how this lineup is shaking out, which I'm totally fine with doing. And I think that's the point Spence was making in the beginning of the show, in that you could even have potentially a lineup that wins the tournament with Scotty Scheffler winning without even having Scotty Scheffler in it, right? Because how much you can afford by putting Scotty Scheffler in your lineup. So this is the type of build that would look like. I know Sia's going for, so I'll pass it to you, Spence. Will you be playing Ludwig or Cam Young at all this week?
Let me touch on Oberg here. When I was talking at the beginning of the show and we were discussing this narrative that comes out in the space of, there's always groupthink mentality. I think in Masters, it gets ramped up to a different level here. I can understand the arguments that people don't want to bet Oberg when numbers opened up at a certain price. And we see him on, we have this discussion every single week on this show. He has historically been better at these club down courses. I understand that factor here, but there's a lot of intrigue for me when all of a sudden this narrative goes too far of the first time outlook that we're looking at here. And it's like, okay, it's his first time. I'd rather see what he's going to do. I'd rather go to Hideki. I'd rather go to Joaquin Niemann. I think Oberg has GPP. Obviously, everybody has playability. I don't want to use that word, but like there is real upside here that is potentially not necessarily being viewed, maybe because of these longer courses, maybe because of the first time narrative, but I like him this week. I think he is a value at what we're talking about right now. And just specifically your build, I see him at around 10%. That's already one of the ways that we can make it a little bit different. We're starting to now work towards this becoming different. And that's what I like about the pick more than anything else, because you could very easily have gone to Joaquin Niemann, and now all of a sudden we're just going chalk, chalk, chalk across the board on the first three.
What was the narrative? It didn't sound like, David, that you liked Cameron Young this week. I don't know if we spoke about him, but I kind of do like Cameron Young this week. Obviously, he's got some issues with the short game. The 2 times he's been at Augusta, he hasn't been that bad around the green. I mean, his first time, he missed the cut. Second time, he was really good off the tee and with the putter. I do think he's a good course fit outside of the ARG. Again, hasn't been terrible so far with that. David, you don't like him, though.
I don't know. And I mean, when Joel started talking about long drivers, I really thought he was about to take Bryson DeChambeau, and I was about to give him a really hard time about that after, Bryson declared Augusta National was a par 67. And then ever since then, he's only shot 67 once and then has always exceeded that score, which I found fantastic. But yeah, look, Cam Young for me, I really struggle to see him actually going out and completing the victory. The argument that Joel's going to make here is that you don't need him to go and win, which is true. You don't. He can go and finish top 5 and they'll be fine. I just wonder with Cam Young where that upside is. He's shown time and time again, and especially recently, earlier this year at the Dubai Desert Classic, that when he's in contention, anytime he was sniffing the lead, he found a way to throw it away. And yeah, second place at the Valspar Championship recently. I mean, that's obviously some promising incoming form. 7th at the Masters last year. I get all that. But when I'm looking at a guy who's kind of like 14% owned, and I've got options like Tony Finau, who I really like this week, I can go down and save some salary and get a Lowry or a Fitzpatrick or a Harmon. Like if Shane Lowry came out and won the Masters this week, I would not be surprised whatsoever, especially given the weather forecast. Whereas Cam Young comes out and win this week, I'd be like, oh, like of all the places that Cam Young gets his debut victory, it was Augusta National. That for me would be a surprise.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, you started with Will Zalatoris to hit the gala and Tony Finau. Who's next?
Yeah, in regards to Joel's other pick, I really love Ludwig Aubert. I think it's the best chance that we've ever had for the fuzzy seller curse from 1979 to be broken with both Ludwig and Wyndham Clark in the field. Really viable chances. Ludwig has never played in a major before, so that'll be an incredible storyline, but we just know he's one of the top 5 players in the world. I'm going to go and get a player that I tipped up earlier this year when he got a special exemption to this field at 50-1 as soon as he got announced into the field. That was Joaquin Niemann. He was 51 with 5 places, 71 in outright win markets. He's immediately been cut into 25-1, and Joaquin Niemann is playing quite easily the best golf of his career at the moment. He's won 3 times since December. He played very well at the Dubai Desert Classic. He finished 4th there. Dubai Desert Classic, Emirates Golf Club is intrinsically linked with the Masters. Danny Willett, 100-1 shot, won the Dubai Desert Classic the same year that he went and won the Masters. Sergio Garcia, 50-1, won for us at the Masters the same year that he won at the Dubai Desert Classic. So there's great links there. His correlated form is excellent. We actually tipped him at 50-1 again back in 2022. That was back off winning Riviera, winning it at Genesis Invitational by quite some margin. He was 3rd after the first round that tournament, and his Masters record just speaks of one of continual improvement. 16th last time that we saw him here at Augusta National last year. Really fought his way to get into this field. And by the way, Plantation course, the other comp course that we're looking at this week, he's finished 2nd and 5th. 5th in 2 attempts. So he ticks every single box for me. He's got every motivation to come out and play well just because he isn't getting the starts where he can get the OWGR points. A win here at Augusta National cements him at the Masters for the rest of his career. And I think that's a huge motivating factor for him. I think he's got every chance. He's a very viable chance to win this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, you're continuing to stack your team with win equity, and yet you're doing it in a way that you're not taking popular guys, which again, if you're looking for a formula, you might not be in love with these guys, but look at how he's building this team. Listen, some of these guys are going to catch some ownership. Don't get me wrong. Like Neiman will catch a little bit. The guy will catch a little bit, but probably not as much as they have earned. And Finau and Will are going to be well below like a classic ownership that you might see at a major or at a big event. So I like the Neiman play. Spencer, before we lock in the audience's pick, and I do think it's locked. Surprising pick, but I don't hate it. I want to get everybody's opinion on it. Your take on Neiman, is he in or out?
Here's how I would explain it. He's a 25-year-old who was thought of as an elite golfer before he left. He left at a young part of his career. We move over to live out of sight, out of mind in this position. I know he's crushing what he's producing on live, and you're going to hear all of those results with it, but there's real reason to believe. I don't think this is like a hyperbolic statement that I'm making here. Like there's real reason to believe this. He could be a legitimate top 5 player in the world at this moment, and we just don't realize it because he's not playing on the PGA Tour week in and week out. My model loved him. I'm running a long-term duration. I put in a little bit of live data, don't have a ton to base off of it, but that's a lot of the long-term statistics that I had for him before he left. And he's a better golfer now than on the data that I had. So Joaquin Neiman is a good pick this week. He was one of those names that survived that 7 Deadly Sins article. I would not be shocked if, we're going to need his best career major finish 16th. We're going to need a lot better than that to get the victory, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that he couldn't find a way to win this tournament.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I hadn't really decided on Neiman yet, to be honest with you. And just after this show, I'm sure other people are convinced as well. I think I'm going to have him in my player pool. Joel, your thoughts on Neiman, and then, you know what? Let me lock in the audience pick first, because I want to get your thoughts on their pick more than anything. Cam Smith. I didn't think the audience was going this direction. Somebody pointed out that he withdrew last week. That was food poisoning, as Prasant just pointed out. That was food poisoning, so it shouldn't be a big deal. Hasn't been in the best form. I kind of see Cam Smith as almost like a Brooks Koepka type, like kind of probably doesn't care until he gets to a major. Cam Smith, Joel, how does that sit with you?
I actually like Cam Smith. Funny, and I'm laughing because I was planning on taking him next. So I think Cam Smith's the type of guy that plays up if you're valuing, which you should, history at this course. He has an excellent history. I mean, he has a T2, a T3, a T5, a T10. So he knows this course. You're getting him under 9K. And I think that's what you're betting on. He's going to rise to the occasion. Now, whatever he had food poisoning, whatever his last result was bad, but he has a T2 in March. So, I mean, it's live. So, what does that mean? It's different. We don't know, but at least he played good golf in one of his most recent tournaments. So Cam Smith is a guy that I like to back and rising to the occasion in these big tournaments.
Yeah. David, your thoughts on Cam Smith before we get to Spencer's back-to-back picks?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting to say he's not really informed because, I mean, he only lost in Hong Kong after making a playoff. So he lost a playoff for that event there. And then Miami, he was suffering food poisoning. So how much do you read into shooting a 78th there? If anything, I kind of like the withdrawal. I think that means his ownership gets depressed a little bit. He's sitting right there next to Hideki, who's at 17%. I mean, who's more likely to withdraw, like Hideki or Cam Smith? Which one? So Cam Smith at sort of 10% right there is a really good chance. And look, I mean, his Masters record is just impeccable. So if guys are a little bit down on him, you can get a guy who's finished 5th, 2nd, 10th, 3rd at this golf course. I think that's fantastic value. Really, really nice play.
All right. Spencer, we got back-to-back picks from you. By the way, Japan, thanks for the update in the chat. I had an Arizona Diamondbacks play, and that one hit. I'm doing well in the first 5s, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Spencer, you've got back-to-back. I like your team so far. How are you going to screw it up?
Well, I'll tell you how I'm going to screw it up. See, it's how I screw it up every single time at Augusta.
Yes.
Here's the problem that I run into. And I do this in outright betting. I do it in DFS conversations. I started, I'm like, all right, not going to take him. Not going to take him. Not going to take him. You've now given me, this is my fourth opportunity. It'll be my fourth and fifth chance here. I can't continue to pass on Rory McIlroy.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going somewhere else. Okay.
No, this is the Rory game that seems to plague me every single year. I think for DFS purposes, it's a little bit different than the lack of perceived win equity. I mean, I guess it's not perceived. He hasn't actually won this tournament, but I also think that there's this built-in narrative that's gone a little bit too far. But here's what I look at with Rory. This is the epitome of high variance. I think people hear volatility and always think of the worst of that answer, but it honestly plays both ways. He gained 1.88 strokes per round at the Valero with his approach game last week. That was the best output that I had in my model in 5 years. The Wells Fargo in 2019 was the last time that was better. If you really want to even get more technical than this, and this is where my intrigue really came into the mix here, there were only 6 events of any event that I had on Rory from 2010 or beyond that were better approach plays over 4 rounds than what I had. 4 of those 6 came either, we'll call it Rory's prime here, but 2013 or prior. So there has been 2 approach tournaments, Wells Fargo and last week, since 2013. That is as good as we're going to get. We always go into the Masters and I think he's too aggressive. He takes these routes. He talked about safety last week. He talked about strategy. He was averaging 11 bogeys per tournament. All of a sudden now last week he puts up 4, the bogey-free Sunday. I know that that's all that fluff of Rory on Sunday out of contention, working up the leaderboard. I get all of that, but I think from a DFS perspective, we'll remove the betting mix for a second. Remove those 2 missed cuts that we've gotten recently from Rory. Look at the Augusta National success that he has had, even since he's been going for the Grand Slam. It's a lot of top 10 finishes in a row. So if you guys want to touch on that in a second, I'm going to try to figure out what my second pick is, but I'm going to start with Rory.
Yeah, it's Zach Jeffers says Rory +7 on Thursday.
That's what's going to happen. Zach is right. It happens every single time that I back him, but I don't know. I'm just going to trust my math here.
Yeah, guys like Rory and Xander, I tend to just not get behind. But I mean, I don't hate the Rory play at all. And I like what Spencer said about how he was going to approach the Masters this time. And I know he has kind of like a different strategy every time or a different thing he does. But like, it does kind of, it's like, it does make sense that maybe you approach this in a different way, maybe a smarter way, and that might work out for a very talented Rory McIlroy. So, David, let me go to you while Spencer thinks of his second golfer. In or out on Rory McIlroy?
I'm in, but I'm a big sucker for Rory McIlroy at Augusta National as well. And I think the thing is he just pops up in the data. Like this golf course is built for Rory McIlroy. And the question comes is, when is he going to get over those mental scars that he really started to accumulate when he was 21 years old in 2011, had a 4-shot lead at the Masters, absolutely choked, threw it away on the final day, and he's just carried those demons with him for years and years. What I would say is a positive for him, as Spence pointed out, the approach play really looked good last week. He seems to be a little bit under the radar because the Scotty Scheffler story is so large, the joining back of the live players is so large that the Rory McIlroy Grand Slam isn't the main story of the week, which it usually is. He's put aside his association being PGA Tour spokesperson. He's not involved in those live discussions anymore. He went back to see Butch Harmon. He immediately added some swing thoughts and changes to his game. And I think all of those are real positives for him. The question is just what is going to happen. And in some ways, I saw in the chat about the forecast, and I think that is actually a positive for Rory. I'm hoping it is, because rather than going out on Thursday and going, oh, holy shit, it's the Masters, like I've got to go and win this thing and I better not screw this up again. He's thinking, okay, I've got a 15-mile wind off my right shoulder. It's pouring with rain, and he's dealing with this other element, and that's going to take some of his attention, hopefully, away from the head games that Augusta National manages to play on him. So I was very close to betting him this week in the outright market at 10-1. I was very tempted. I put him up here 2 years ago, the same tournament that I tipped Shane Lowry. They mentioned to you, Sia, at 50-1. I had McIlroy that week at 20-1, and he came out and finished second. Then the following year turns up and misses the cut. So Rory McIlroy, the constant debate of just who knows which McIlroy turns up. I'd love to see him win it. I really would.
All right, Spencer, I assume you're ready. Who's next?
All right, so the third best value in my model was Harris English. I'm going to go with the second best value that I have in my model right now. it's a golfer that's going to carry a lot of ownership. I understand that. I do think my lineup is starting to get a little bit chalky in some of these spots. That's something that I'll have to be cognizant of with this final pick, but I think Siwoo Kim is massively underpriced at 7,100. If you want to make the argument that there's too much ownership, I don't hate anybody that wants to go that route with it, but 10 consecutive made cuts, 8 consecutive rounds of shooting par or better. The course history at Augusta has been solid across the board. A bunch of made cuts over the last 5 years, maybe lacking some of the true upside that we're looking for, but kind of throughout my model, the around the green numbers look great. The weighted short game is inside the top 25. He's inside the top 12 for me when you take comp courses, when I'm looking for this minimal rough, hard scoring sort of a nature there. Probably too popular, but I think it's one of those situations where the price tag is too cheap.
Fair enough. No, I don't mind that pick at all. Joel, let me ask you before we get to the audience pitch, which I think is already selected. I'm in on Siwoo Kim. Are you also in on Siwoo?
I am. I'm a little concerned about the ownership too. It's getting to a point of like maybe the ownership gets too high and I'll pivot because I don't want to play a super chalky Siwoo. But if that ownership number stays below, I'll call it 15, then I'll definitely be playing them.
All right. I think the audience, correct me if I'm wrong, audience. Thorbjorn Olesen appears to be the pick. Listen, a little left field to me. He's played at the Masters before. It was a while ago. Fared pretty well. Valero, he was pretty solid. The approach game, I'm not looking at his stats right now, but I seem to recall the approach game really being dialed in for Olsen. David, I got to go to you on Thorbjorn. What's your thoughts on him at Augusta?
Yeah, look, I think this is actually a pretty savvy play from the audience here. You've got Adrian Moronk, who's taking up a lot of the ownership in that range. So unlike the Taylor Moore play, I much prefer the Olesen route. Look, he played here quite some time ago, back in 2013, finished 6th on debut. I think that was really, really impressive for just a very talented golfer. He's earned his way back into the limelight of golf. He went through some pretty big struggles off the back of facing some charges, which were eventually dismissed, and you could just see the relief and the immediate effect that had on his golf game as a result. And I think because of that, you sort of miss the fact that this is a very talented golfer who kind of was in the wilderness for 2 years while he was dealing with that court case, and comes back to a golf course he's played really well at. I think he's got every chance off the back of a 14th place last week to come out here and give you a top 20, which at the salary that you're looking at is very good. You know, even if he finishes top 30, you're going to be happy, really. And the ownership is a big positive for Olesen.
Yeah, very interesting. KF Ball and who was it? Jordan, do not like that pick. But let's be honest, to you two and a lot of people who follow the PGA Tour, a lot of you aren't really on. And I understand, like, he's played at PGA Tour events, but the four tournament sample size you're utilizing maybe isn't the right sample size for Olsen, especially as it relates to Augusta. So if there's anybody I'm going to leave my trust in, really literally anybody, when it comes to players that are not typically your standard PGA Tour players, more on the Euro Tour, it's going to be David Bileski. All right, let's move on to David. It's your pick. I mean, yeah. I love what I'm really curious to see how this lineup goes, because I'm definitely going to steal it and put it in a tournament for myself here. I'm very curious to see what you do next.
I mean, that's a typical captain team Sia move there. Just absolute rubbish his own team and just sends tons of praise to one of his competitors. I'm kind of here for it. Just to give a quick DP World Tour answer to Olesen in response to what you just said. Dubai Desert Classic, as I mentioned, you've got Willett and Garcia both won that tournament. I'll read you Thorbjorn Olesen's record at Emirates Golf Club because it's pretty impeccable. Finished 3rd, 5th, miscut 8th, 32nd, 29th, 7th, 35th, 16th, 21st. So multiple top 10s, multiple top 20s at a golf course that's very, very correlated to Augusta National. Rory McIlroy's also won the Dubai Desert Classic 4 times. So at that, I was a bit worried when Spence was going in that 7,100 range because really needed to round up this lineup by putting Adam Scott in.
I knew you were going to do that. That was I probably should have flipped it. I love Adam Scott this week, but I'll let you continue.
Yeah, that was where I was always going to go at this point, and yeah, very pleased that Spence did that because I didn't want to touch Siwoo Kim. So look, Adam Scott just a few tournaments ago was like regarded as like the hottest name in golf, right? Like the turn of the new year, he was just on absolute fantastic form. As part of that, he finished 19th at the Genesis Invitational. Riviera Country Club, we know, is very correlated to Augusta National. Back in the day, he's won twice at the Genesis Invitational at Riviera. He's a previous Masters champion, obviously, in 2013. So I'd say that he likes the course based on that answer alone. He's also played at the Emirates Golf Club 2 times in 2024 and 2022. He finished 7th and 9th in both of those events. So it's the kind of golf course that I expect Adam Scott to turn up and play well in. Obviously, he's got a lot of history. I think that the weather does Adam Scott a favor as well in terms of making it a bit tougher. His short game and his putting can really come to the fore and play a big role on a golf course that he loves. So I think he's very good value at 7,100 and low owned as well. Like I'm getting like 7% on Adam Scott at the moment, which is very, very low.
I'm sorry. At the back end of your explanation, I was just looking at the chat. Zach says Sia shade, nothing new, and then Chris Kish dishes out Sia was the eclipse. Absolutely love that answer. All right, clearly Spencer, you like Adam Scott. I probably won't be on Adam Scott, but Spencer, any more to add to what David just said?
I think Adam Scott's probably one of the best values for the reason that what David said. I won't spend any extra time on it. I was hoping that I could round out this build with Siwoo Kim and Adam Scott. I was looking at ownership there. If you're directly comparing Siwoo Kim and Adam Scott, and this is where I feel unfortunate now, like with the way that this draft has gone, one player's 15%, one player's 7%. I think you can legitimately flip a coin of which one's better. Give me the guy that has less ownership in Adam Scott. So, unfortunately, this kind of backfired the way that I played it. I just knew Siwoo Kim wasn't going to get back to me, but great pick from David there.
All right, Joel, you got back-to-back picks. I like how you've started your team. I think Cameron Young's like a controversial pick. I think Ludwig's a controversial pick, but I think they have plenty of upside. So how are you rounding out your team?
All right, so I'll be honest here. A lot of the guys in the mid-8 range that I would have taken are already gone, so I have to kind of go somewhere else here. I like Justin Thomas. He wouldn't have been my first choice, but I kind of feel like I'm stuck with him here. So I'm going to take Justin Thomas first. Listen, he's striking the ball well. He's having a little bit of issues off the tee right now, but you can go back to he does have a good history here. He's playing a lot better this year than he was last year, so he's on the rise. I think he could show up, and he's definitely one that we've read about, takes this tournament very seriously. He's probably been preparing for over a month for this tournament, so if you want to attribute some of his failures more recently to the fact that he's probably put more focus on this tournament and you buy into that, then this is the spot for him to show up and have a really good showing. So I like Justin Thomas here at 8,700. I think he has plenty of upside. And I'm going to pair him with Corey Connors, another guy who really good ball striker, likes this course, 7,500, has played well here. You get a good value on him. He even has some really good recent results. So if I'm looking in the 7K range, there's like 3 to 4 guys that are really my preference to go to, and Corey Connors is one of them.
I like this team. I like what you've done with this team. This is obviously like a pretty balanced build, which I don't think a lot of people are going to be building this way. I think it's something to consider. And I would say, obviously, David, your team so far is a pretty balanced build as well. David, let me ask you before you make your final pick here. Justin Thomas, a pretty controversial pick in this turn, not just from Joel, but just in general. Would you lean towards Justin Thomas just because not a lot of people are going to be going that route?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's viable, especially in large GPPs. Look, I know that Justin Thomas has got a bit of a hard rep the last few years. I think he has looked a lot better this year. His approach games really start to trend upwards. He's extremely low owned, but he's got good record at the Masters. And the weather, I think, is a really important factor that people are not going to be taking into account. Like, think about the 2022 PGA Championship when Justin Thomas came out and won that tournament. Extremely windy tournament, like one of the best wind form guides that you can look at in a major championship. And if that's what we're expecting those first 2 days, well, Justin Thomas can put himself right in contention. As for Corey Connors, would have been my last pick had Joel not stolen him. That's where I was going to go. So I really like the 3 top 10s he had in 2020, 2021, and 2022. He looks to be back to his best in ball striking. So I think that's a savvy play. And unfortunately, Joel stolen him. So Shane Lowry stolen from me, Corey Connors stolen from me. Harris English stolen for me, Matt Fitzpatrick stolen for me. I'm just throwing shade at all of those guys with the jinx this week.
All right. Well, you've got one more pick to steal from somebody else. Who's it going to be after Adam Scott?
I do. As I said, I would have loved to have gone with Corey Connors to round this out. It would have made, I think, a really strong lineup of guys who either have very good history at Augusta National or at comp courses. I'm instead going to be forced, I think, to go to Brian Harman here. Look, I don't necessarily love the fit for him. I'm a bit worried about his driving distance. What I would say is that we all know what the Open Championship was in terms of weather. We all know what happened there. Brian Harman ran away with that tournament. So hopefully some of the bad weather can improve his chances. He's actually got a surprisingly good record at Plantation Course. He's got a 3rd and a 5th there, which is really impressive. Never finished better than 12th at the Masters, and that's a concern for me, although I would say that he is playing the best golf of his career at the moment. Has finished 3rd at Riviera as well. So, look, not my favorite play. Would have much rather have gone Corey Connors to round out the lineup here, but second recently at the Players' Championship. Brian Hartman's been showing up in big spots, and we'll have to take him here instead of Connors.
Yeah, very interesting. Joel, what do you think about Brian Harman? Because he's a guy I usually like to lean on. I like David's explanation. I don't know that I like him here, but then again, from an ownership standpoint, I'm not looking at it right now. I can't imagine a lot of people are jumping on Brian Harman because to most people, he doesn't seem like the best course fit. In or out on Brian?
I have a similar answer to Harman as I did to Justin Thomas. You know, he's probably not my first pick in this range, but with some of these other guys gone, I can see I would fall back to him. Like I don't hate him. I'm not totally opposed, but there's some other guys in that 7K range I would prefer.
Yeah, fair enough. And his ownership should be pretty low. I'm looking at around 8% right now. I think that's probably where it's going to stay. But again, we'll see final ownership numbers from Stephen Pilardi at WinDailySports.com. All right, the audience, have they locked in our final pick? I actually don't know. As I scroll, what is it?
It looks like it was Tyrrell Hatton, I believe.
Okay. Hatton left for the Live Tour, and he's back on at Augusta with our team. I don't really mind that pick. I wasn't really going to be on Hatton. I don't recall his history being super immaculate here as I take a look at it now. Actually, I mean, he's got a top 20 finish, but I don't know. I don't have much to go on with Tyrrell Hatton. Spencer, any thoughts on Hatton?
We've heard what he has said about Augusta National in the past. Like, I won't use the words on the show, but you can go look in any article about how he's talked about this venue. Not necessarily one that he has loved in comments, but my model really liked him this week for whatever that's worth. Like, there's no ownership around him. I have him at sub 7%. And it's one of those situations right now when we're looking, and I guess I'll credit Joel a little bit for some of these decisions. And maybe this is like me not taking Corey Connors. That would have been another name outside of Adam Scott that I could have chosen instead of Siwoo Kim. Corey Connors kind of made everybody else take a different route than they wanted to go at the end here once Joel got him off the board. So that's what happens during the PGA Draftcast. There's a lot of names that get chosen that you then have to pivot to a Brian Harman that you may not want. I'm going to have to pivot in a second to a name that wouldn't have been my first choice. I much would have preferred Adam Scott, but that's kind of just the nature of the game here. But I do think Hatton has upside.
Byron says, Sia just lawyered us with the nicest. Guys, what the heck was that? Gambits ever. It's pretty funny, actually, because that is kind of what I was doing. But what do I know? I'm just the guy that picks Kurt Kitayama over Mackenzie, not in the Masters Hughes. All right, Spencer, you do have a final pick here. What's it going to be?
As I said, I wish this would have been Adam Scott with the first pick and then probably finish this off with, I mean, if I want to put a lot of money on the table and really make this lineup different, and I'll talk about a different way that you can consider playing this guy in a second, but I mentioned the top 2 values in my model. If you want to know who the top value in my model would be, it's Austin Eckroat down in the 6,000s, 11 made cuts in 12 tournaments, victory at the Cognizant, 37 spot increase in expected strokes gained around the green. That would be the route to leave a lot of money on the table. I'm not going to go in that route this time around. I'm going to go with the golfer that I seem to take all the time. I had him in Houston a couple of weeks ago. He won that event. We talk about added distance, the around the green acumen that he can bring. Steven Yeager has no ownership right now in my model. So this is, you know, a 1B version to what Adam Scott is to me. If I directly compare them against one another, Adam Scott is more in the minus 125 range when we're looking at head-to-head matchups there. But I think I'm getting an upside profile with Yeager here where he does have the prerequisites that I would like to see for him to find success, even though this is his first appearance.
I want to do a yes or no with Joel and David. David, I'll start with you on Jaeger and Eckroat, because I think those are interesting names sort of in the lower priced area that are obviously good players, but not really getting talked about a ton. I mean, I'm sure they're going to get some ownership relative to that range, but interesting names nonetheless. So let's start, David, with Eckroat. Yes or no?
Big yes.
Big yes. And let's go with Jaeger. Yes or no?
Maybe.
Okay. Joel, yes or no on, we'll start with Austin Eckroat.
For Eckroat, I'm going to give you a small yes.
Okay. And for Steven Jaeger?
No.
All right. There we go. Yeah, Eckroat's interesting. He wasn't on my radar. Jaeger was kind of like he was on my radar. I didn't know if I was going to play him or not. Eckroat is interesting to me. All right. Joel, I guess we completed the draft, but I know we have much more to cover, including first round leaders. By the way, the chat's been on fire, I got to say.
Like I said at the beginning of the show, we have the best audience in the business. You guys carry the show. We greatly appreciate you. While we're here, do us a favor. Just hit the like button. Give us a follow. It goes a long way. But as Sia said, we are not done yet. Before we let you go tonight, we are going to give you our first round leaders. And before we wrap up, don't forget, if you aren't already, sign up for Win Daily. Get into Discord. Tomorrow night, we'll be sending out our ownership article. It is critical that you read Steven's ownership article and understand what the ownership looks like so you can make some of these decisions. If you have a tiebreaker and you want the lower owned guy, that is where you can find that information. There is also some severe weather that's going to be happening this week. You want those weather updates and you want them as close to tee off as possible. So get into Discord on Wednesday night, get an understanding of what the weather updates are, where you might be able to get an edge. And, of course, there'll be some outright bets posted as well. But before we let you go, we are going to dive into this first-round leader market. We'll start with you, David. Who are you targeting in the first-round leader market this week?
Yeah, I mean, look, it is a really interesting week with the weather. I think it's going to play a big part getting this forecast right. Bear in mind, I mean, it is a 90-person field. So on paper, you're like, okay, smaller field, they'll kind of all get out in time. But everybody goes off the first tee. And so because of that, it is kind of a longer window when these guys are out there. So if there's rain, if there's wind, if there's thunderstorms, can really play a bit of an impact. And a quick comment on Austin Eckroat. Over the last 30 days, Austin Eckroat is the 6th best in this field for strokes gained approach. So at a ball striking paradise, that's a really, really interesting stat to look at. So first round leaders, I'm going all afternoon. The reason being is that I think regardless kind of what happens with these thunderstorms, that could end up being the better wave to be in. If they end out there in the morning looks windier. There's a lot of heavy rain forecast. There's thunderstorms. I do think it gets delayed. But even if it does get delayed, then that means those afternoon tee times are likely going to be going out Friday morning, which looks even better still in terms of the wind. So all afternoon tee times for me for first round leaders. So in that group, I've got Brooks Koepka 25-1. Just feels like a name who would look up on the end of Thursday and go like, oh yeah, of course, Brooks Koepka is winning the Masters after the first round. Ludwig Aberg at 33-1, I think is very good value. Sahith Theegala 45-1, and Adam Scott 60-1. Again, spoke about them as I drafted them on the show. All of those go out as late as possible on Thursday. So I think there's some very good value to be found there.
I love it. I love it. How about you, Spence? Who are you looking at in the first round leader market this week?
So I normally do this when Sia's on the show. I put out the red carpet. I let Sia have the first round leader market. I'm going to give two different plays for this show that don't have to do with first round leaders. I'm going to switch this up and let Sia give us who the winner in the first round leader is going to be. Here's the two plays I like. Corey Connors -125 over Minwoo Lee. Look at Minwoo Lee here. Read the articles that have come out. This is beyond just these answers. The statistical data also like this. Minwoo Lee broke his finger last week. Minwoo Lee is sick entering this tournament. You look at Corey Connors' profile of what he's put together at this tournament, a lot to like there. Second pick, since we've talked so much about it, David and I recently, Austin Eckroat to make the cut. This is not the same golfer that he was 12 months ago. That 11 cuts that he made cuts that he's had in 12 tournaments. I think there is a lot of intrigue there. He has tons of playability for DFS. He's also one of the better values here. Like if this was not Augusta National where this was a first-time tournament and you threw this anywhere else, my model had it more in the -150 range of what is proper for him to make the cut here. So I think you're getting a lot of value. I got it at -110. I see it now more in that -120 to -125 range, but I still have value at that total. for me, Eckroat was the best value I had on the board.
I love it. I love it. I love those picks. I'm actually going to take that Connor's pick right now. I do have 3 first-round leaders for you. I guess it is a little bit of coincidence. That's a lot of guys that I drafted. There's the guys I like. I'm going to take Ludwig to be a first-round leader first time. You're getting him at 35-1. I'm going to take Justin Thomas also at 35-1. A lot of the reason why Justin Thomas is we've seen him go off in these super windy days and really kind of show out. So if there's any correlation to him doing that again, this could be a really good spot for that. And the last one is Cameron Young. Cameron Young does have a tendency to kind of start hot in these big events. We always seem to be starting off at the top of the leaderboard and then kind of dwindling as it goes on. So this is a big event. Cameron Young's playing well. I think he can come out to another hot start at 45-1. All right, Sia, enlighten us. Who is going to be the first round leader at the end of, well, maybe potentially Friday, but probably at the end of the day, Thursday?
So I'll tell you what, we have a lot of crossover. This is very good. Brooks Koepka is my first choice here at 25-ish to 1. I think that, David, is that where you got Brooks Koepka at 25?
Yeah, I think his 30's elsewhere, but the 25 does come with 7 places. So you've got that addition.
Okay, so I like him at 25-1. Let's see. I'm going off memory here. I'm going to save the easy button play. But the next shortest odds is my easy button play. But I'm going to go with Cam Young, who again I like this week, but particularly in a round 1 scenario versus maybe all 4 rounds at 45-1. Shane Lowry at 45-1. And by the way, because of the weather issues, this is the first time you'll ever see this from me, at least this year, where I'm just kind of going across the board. I'm not picking an afternoon wave. I'm not picking a morning wave. I'm just with the 4 players I'm going to offer. It's across the board. Shane Lowry, Cam Young at 45-1, Brooks Koepka 25-1, or 30-1 actually, because I'm looking at it at DraftKings right now. It's 30-1. But the easy button plays, it happens to be the shortest odds. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't get any easier than this. This guy has been red hot. He's awesome at Augusta. Won at Augusta over the last, over the last 3 years, constantly top 20s here. When he shows up, I can't guarantee he's going to play 4 rounds. I can't do that for you. What I can guarantee you, though, is that he's going to play 1 round. And that at the end of that 1 round, he will be on the top of the leaderboard. Of course, everybody knows who I'm talking about. Your easy button first round leader for the 2024 Masters, none other than at 25-1, Hideki Matsuyama. You're welcome, everybody.
That's not personally who I thought we were talking about. I love the Hideki Matsuyama play. I thought we were talking about Kurt Kitayama. I thought that's where we were going with it. But...
Sprinkle a little bit on Kurt Kitayama.
I will add, it didn't work out for my draft because of how I got more balance. But of the guys in the middle to low 6K range, I actually really do like Kurt Kitayama this week. And we were joking about him because of the controversy last week. But I do think if you're going to dip to that range, Kitayama is my favorite play below, let's call it 68 or 6900.
Can I say one thing really quickly? I know this show's gone on for an hour and a half. We'll get everybody out of here. But see, I want to say something about the Kurt Kitayama pick just very, very quickly. I run my model every single week that takes the ball striking totals, and then it tries to compare what my baseline projection would be around the green and putting. Kurt Kitayama, regardless of what happened, was a good selection in that tournament. Throughout all 4 rounds that I ran it, he was one of the biggest underachievers in my model based off of the expectation level. It obviously looks much, much worse when 2 players just go near the top of the leaderboard to start with it. But I think Kurt Kitayama made a lot of sense. Like, we can joke about it and we can have fun with the discussion, but Kurt Kitayama was unlucky to even be in that position to almost miss the cut. Mm-hmm. And then probably, in fairness, unlucky to not get a better finish at the end of the day too.
I don't know if everybody's met the PR machine that is Spencer Aguiar, otherwise known as Tee Off Sports, but I hire him for this reason. He most of you don't know this. I have him on retainer for responses like that. And if nothing else, I think what that means is that Kurt Kitayama wins the Masters. You're welcome, everybody.
There you go. You've heard it there. I can't leave without having the final word either. And I've got to say that Spence, I gave out the Corey Connors over Minwoo Lee play as part of a double recently on an article with Ben Coley. So I was also on that play, spotted that one there. And I paired it up with Adam Scott over Ricky Fowler as a double at plus 243 because Adam Scott is a past champion. He's been playing very good golf, and Ricky Fowler has been absolutely dreadful. Like, let's be honest, he has been horrific. So very much would like to endorse that bet before we do our usual sign off.
I love it. There you have it. You got your winners. We have a big week ahead. This is a tradition unlike any other. Have fun. The biggest week in golf. I think I covered it all. Did I forget anything, Sia?
You forgot to say hello, friends, and sports.